Something shifted in me, though nothing looked different. My crash had unclipped something taut inside my chest. It wasn't a revelation so much as an unhooking. The world returned brighter and louder, but I was listening to a different channel now. Small sounds, the space between sentences, the way breath settles. At first it was simple things, a cup of coffee that tasted like coffee, a street that didn't demand a metaphor. I sat in a cafe and let the refrigerator hum. I watched a spoon strike a saucer and go back to sleep. The pause between words felt like a doorway. She watched me through this, sometimes with amusement, sometimes with the careful worry of someone who doesn't want to lose the person she knows to a new habit. She called it the interruption, that awkward moment when stillness arrives and nothing is ready to receive it. You sound like a monk, she said once, smiling. Do monks eat dal on Thursdays? Maybe, I said, maybe they don't have deadlines. She laughed, and the sound joined the small choir of ordinary noises I'd begun to keep. I tried not to make it a performance. Presence, I learned, dies quickly when you announce it. Work found me the way it always does. An email with a polite hunger. Keynote invitation. We'd love you to speak on the power of stillness. The subject line looked like an old life tapping me on the shoulder. I closed the laptop and made tea. The offer didn't feel like opportunity. It felt like an exam. Would I stand at a podium and perform silence into a neat takeaway, or would the quiet I'd found be swallowed by applause? I walked instead. The city had not changed. People still argued about parking. A cyclist performed a minor miracle. Children negotiated treaties over dirt and plastic trucks. I sat on a bench while a boy sketched a tree that was not there. A remembered tree, and watched him make it true with a pencil. For a moment the world didn't demand meaning. It simply existed. The temptation to return to the old rhythm arrived in smaller forms. Just be honest, he said. The phrase felt soft and sharp at once. I told myself I'd be careful. At first the words epiphany. Monks do eat dull on Thursdays. The cafe wasn't there yesterday, I was certain of that. Yet this morning it stood quietly between a shuttered hardware store and an alley that led nowhere. The sign above the door read, "Maybe," inside the silent swallowed sound. No wait staff, no menu, only a small table at the back. Someone was already seated. They looked ordinary, almost too ordinary, but their eyes unsettled me. They carried every question I had never dared to ask. You came, they said, was I meant to? No one is meant to, but everyone arrives eventually. I sat, the table dissolved between us. Who are you, I asked. They shrugged, the silence, the pause between your thoughts. Call me what you like, the void, a faint smile. If the name makes you comfortable, I hesitated. Am I dreaming? Does it matter? The room shifted, walls fell away until we were nowhere, a gray expanse, neither dark nor light. I feel like I'm dissolving, I admit it, like I'm losing myself. That isn't lost, they said, that's clarity. But if I'm not the story I've told myself, who am I? Their eyes narrowed, amused. Why must there be a who? Do you think the sky asks who it is each morning? I wanted to argue, but the words caught. Finally I whispered, then what's the point of all this? Of life? Their laugh was soft, echoey without sound. Why do you assume there must be one? Because otherwise the suffering. I want justice. I looked away. There is no cosmic justice. They said only rhythm curves and echo. You are waiting for God to hand you a map, but you are the cartographer. The silence that followed was heavier than speech. I don't know how long I sat there. Time didn't work in that space. At last I asked, will I remember this? Only when you forget everything else. And with that the cafe vanished. I was back on the street alone, a paper cup in my hand. It was warm, but when I looked inside it was empty. Above me the sign had disappeared, only one word lingered. began with a phone call, the kind that changes nothing outside. But everything inside, I'm sorry, the voice said, she's gone. Something tore then quietly, imperceptibly, as if the fabric of the universe had frayed at one corner. I didn't cry. Not yet, I only listened to the silence after the words, as though if I stayed on the line long enough, I might reach her. They said it was peaceful, that it happened quickly, that she wasn't in pain. But words like that never fit. I walked to the window outside. Children ran on the pavement, a dog barked, the sun carved long shadows across the street. The world did not flinch. Life continued indifferent. Later I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of tea I didn't remember making. The chair opposite was empty, and yet it wasn't. Her hands appeared first in the air before me, folding napkins, stirring tea. Then her eyes, sharp and knowing, the memory lingered, nested in the room like it belonged there. People don't really die. I whispered, not all at once, they fade through you, they echo. And then I heard it, not a voice but a sound like breath, like the turning of a page, the sound of her leaving, not violently, gently, as if she trusted I would carry the rest. Silence moved in after that. It did not knock, it filled the corners of the house, stretched across the bed, hummed in the clock on the wall. At first I resisted. I filled hours with noise, anything to keep it away, but silence waited, patient, heavy. And when I finally stopped running, it spoke not in language, but in presence. It told me small things, that I didn't have to be everything, that grief was only love refusing to let go, that not all questions need answers. They weren't revelations, they were reminders, quiet truths I had avoided naming. I began to write them down in fragments. Being seen is not the same as being loved. Sometimes forgiveness is just learning how to breathe again. Silence doesn't wait for answers, it waits for you to stop asking. I carried them gently like seeds in a pocket, not knowing if they would sprout. Small truths, quiet ones, not meant for applause, not meant to fix or solve anything, just meant to be held. And as I held them, I felt something loose. was no longer empty. It was listening. Smallness became my practice, washing dishes, making dough, folding laundry. These were the sutras of the days, not flashy, but faithful. Presence I found is not a posture, but 100 tiny returns. There were tests, a keynote invitation, a publisher's calendar, Daniel's next deadline. Each offer arrived like a flavor test. How much of the old skin would I trade for comfort? I tried saying no once. It felt good and raw. Saying no in public, I discovered, is polite bankruptcy for your old self. One morning on a bench that had become familiar, I watched a man curled against the curb like an unfinished sentence. I considered my old reflexes to diagnose, to rescue, and then I simply asked, "You alright?" He sneered a little, then admitted something human. We shared a coffee. He walked away. I stayed. The city kept performing its small tragedies and small joys around me. Each a reminder that life's meaning isn't always dramatic. Often it's simply stay with it. phone lit the dark before the words reached me. A name I hadn't seen in months, then years, flashing like a small, insistent weather. I hesitated, thumb hovering. There are calls that are errands signs and calls that are verdicts. This felt like both. I answered, "Are you there?" The voice was thin with surprise and something tighter, relief or reproach. I couldn't tell, it's me. I said, "I'm here." Silence on the line, the kind that carries a memory between two mouths. "We need to talk," she said. Finally, I closed the laptop. The kitchen clock ticked in that conscientious way that makes decisions seem smaller. I found myself folding a tea towel without thinking, the motion a small ritual to steady the moment. We met where we always did, an old cafe that had traded its vinyl for faded velvet, and learned to be kind to people who carried old conversations. She looked the same in the way that mattered, patient, exact, full of that low, dangerous calm she'd always used as a mirror. "You found your way back into being quiet," she said, not unkind. I read the new chapter. "It's different." "Different how?" I asked, bracing. "You stopped narrating other people into props," she said. "You stopped polishing them to make the light fall the way you wanted. You left edges." She tapped the table. "Edges are good." I exhaled, the shape of a laugh. "I've learned that the people I love are not raw material good," she said, "'cause you've also been avoiding something." I straightened. Avoidance had been my old talent, disguised as tact. "You owe my brother an apology," she said. "And not the sort that fits a headline, the small kind, the one that smells like a casserole." The word apology lodged in me like an old key in a new lock. I had rehearsed many things, sentences, defenses, the exact tone that would be most self-aware. An apology, I realized, wanted nothing rehearsed. It wanted presence. "I'll do it," I said. "I will." She watched me for a long moment, then she surprised me also. "Finish the piece on the house," she added. "Not the one that gives you applause, the one that does the work." "You think there's still a piece there?" I asked. I meant the book, I meant the parts of myself I'd shelved for convenience. "There's always a last piece," she said. "Not the one that sums you up, the one that keeps you honest." She stood to go, and for a second I thought she might turn back and say something else. She didn't. She never wasted words on prefaces. After she left, the street felt quieter, as if her leaving had taken with it a kind of unnecessary punctuation. I walked, not sure where my feet wanted to go, and trusting them anyway. At her brother's place, the kettle was already singing when I knocked. He opened the door with the exact expression of a man who'd been waiting for either a fight or soup. Sometimes you can't tell which the other person expects. did you bring something dramatic? He asked. No, I said I brought something edible. I held up a container like a peace treaty. He accepted it the way he accepted small contraband. Suspicious, grateful. We ate at the bench in his kitchen, the light in that golden, forgiving angle that makes truth look less like accusation and more like fact. I began the apology haltingly, because apologies are clumsy in the mouth and clumsiness is honest. I used you, I said in my writing, in ways that made you simpler than you are. The words tasted like iron. I did it to make my sentences cleaner. I'm sorry. He chewed slowly. He set his spoon down and smiled in a way that had nothing to do with triumph. About time, he said, you're gonna stop editing people out for the sake of rhythm. I'm trying, I said, I'm learning to carry, not to borrow. He nodded. Then write the thing you owe. I'm sorry, had to be exact about hurt and small about heroics. Being real, apologies are hard. Was it the truth? She asked at dinner. No, I said it was the truth with the edges filed off. She took my hand. You'll slip, but you know when you do now. I knew the slipperiness no longer disguised itself. I could see the old itch lift its head and name it. There was progress. Other people's lives slid into mine, messy and urgent. My brother knocked on my door one rainy morning, the kind of knock that comes with the sound of someone who's run out of options. He confessed, not the tidy lies that tear away easily, but the messy kind that require work and consequence. My first impulse was to fix, to offer answers, to make the pain smaller for him and safer for me. Instead, I learned again to hold space. I sat with him in the quiet until he could say the words he needed to say himself. There was no rescue. There was tender honesty. Then came a thought from the past. She carried a notebook of abandoned drafts. She read my published piece and politely made me see my failings. You used me as a mirror, she said. You stepped in when it suited you and left when it didn't. I did not argue. I had been slippery, She pushed me toward a harder kindness, finish or burn the old work, do the labor, she said, of being honest, even when it is small and unglamorous. Do the work and let the work judge you, unlike you being judged by it. Was it the truth?
Smallness became my practice, not a resignation, a discipline. Mornings began with the ordinary things. Kettle mug, the precise spoon I'd always used. I learned to make the dal the way she liked it. Come and toast it until it smelled like the inside of a memory. Lentils simmered slow until they lost their hurry. There was no triumph in it, only the quiet satisfaction of attention given and returned. I washed the dishes without music, feeling the warmth of soapy water along the curve of a plate. I folded laundry the way you fold a map you intend to use again, carefully, with the thought that what you return to deserves respect. Each small act was a prayer without words. On the street I stopped rushing. A girl chased pigeons and lost. An old man mended his shoelace on a bench. A woman read a book with the kind of concentration most people reserve for grief. None of it demanded meaning. It simply was. I began to see that presence doesn't announce itself. It arrives in the spare places between tasks. Once I found myself on the usual bench, the one by the river where the light always looked younger. A man curled on the curb caught my eye. He'd been there before. Same jacket, same slow breathing. For a long time I'd been the sort who offered solutions. That day I brought coffee and sat down 2 meters away, the distance polite and available. "You all right?" I asked when the silence grew heavy. He looked up, squinted, then smiled a little. "Is that a question or a script?" "Maybe both," I said. He took the coffee as if it were a small mercy and nodded. We didn't fix anything, we shared a cup. He stood, thanked me in a way that sounded like forgiveness, and walked away. The city swallowed him without malice. I sat a while longer, letting the smallness of that moment settle into me. Someone emailed me again, a polite nudge for another piece, an event, a podcast. Someone else called with a client emergency. The old rhythm sent out a familiar scent, like a shop window you used to walk past and know the hours by the itch to be seen twitched. I noticed it sooner now. It no longer surprised me. Notice, breathe, choose. The sequence became its own work. There were tests in other forms. An acquaintance asked for a favor that felt like leverage. A former editor praised a line and asked for more. Practiced saying no in ways that weren't theatrical. I practiced being small when the world shouted for size. Her notebook sat on my shelf. Sometimes I opened it, read one page and closed it again. The unfinished things had a new tenderness. I did not burn them. I didn't parade them either. I started to answer them, not with proclamations, but with careful drafts, sentences that attended rather than performed. At night, When the apartment quieted and the city lights pooled at the window, the whisper returned, not as accusation, but as a mild, patient coach. Keep asking. The phrase had become less of a command and more of a companion. I let it sit beside me like a lamp. The practice had no grand finish line. There were stumbles. I wrote pieces that felt thin and deleted them the next morning. I said things to her that landed clumsy. She forgave and taught me again. I missed calls that later mattered. I also showed up when it counted, at a friend's awkward apology, at a colleague's fridge light honesty, at her insistence that I finish the work or let it go. Slowly the small truths gathered. Presence is not proof of progress. Honesty is a muscle. Silence is a room you enter and leave 1,000 times. They weren't neat lessons. Mostly they were reminders I carried in my pocket like pebbles to weigh my pockets down when the wind of opinion would have blown me off course. One afternoon she came home carrying a bag of groceries and the exact sourdough she liked. She kissed my temple without ceremony, unpacked, and at some point said, "You're quieter mostly. You're here when I need you." It was not a speech. It was a fact. "I'm trying," I said. She looked at me, assessing and kind. "That's the thing, my love. Trying is the work, not getting it perfect." The man on the curb passed by that evening and tipped an invisible hat as if we'd shared an unspoken agreement. I nodded, he nodded back. The city moved on. I carried my small truths like a list I checked each morning. They didn't feel adequate in moments of loss, nor did they erase the old hunger, but they were steadier than applause. They grounded me, and strangely they were enough. I still wonder, what defines me? As if it mattered.